Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into a story that starts with what seems like the biggest mistake an alien empire could possibly make. Imagine this: you're part of a powerful alien race, conquering worlds, experimenting on lesser species, and you think Earth is just another rock with soft, squishy humans. So you decide to kidnap a 12-year-old boy. Easy, right? Except, you didn't check the kid's family tree. Because this boy? He's the son of the deadliest human alive. The kind of guy nightmares have nightmares about. When the aliens realize what they've done, it's already way too late. Now, an entire abandoned space station will become the battlefield for one man, one prototype weapon, and a mission that's way more personal than political. Along the way there's gonna be chaos, brutal action, a little bit of dark humor, and a hero who doesn't just survive the odds, he bends the odds until they break. Make sure to stick around until the end because their journey will remind us all: humanity always finds a way, even when the whole universe seems to stand against us. Before we dive any deeper, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Your support means the world to us. Thank you so much. Now let's jump into the adventure. Night had fallen over the city, draping the skyline in shades of steel and ash. Streetlights buzzed faintly, casting long shadows over the empty sidewalks. 12-year-old Evan sauntered down the cracked pavement, backpack slung lazily over one shoulder, earbuds blasting music that definitely didn't help him look any more attentive. Above him, unnoticed, a shape moved through the clouds, silent, massive, and very much not from Earth. Across the street, a homeless man saw the ship and muttered under his breath, "Nope," before shuffling quickly into an alley. Smart man. With a low hum that rattled the windows, a beam of light erupted from the ship, swallowing Evan whole. 1 second he was nodding his head to music. The next he was weightless, blinking into a blinding light. "Great," Evan muttered. Either this is a weird dream, or Spotify really upgraded their ads. He landed hard on a cold metal floor. His backpack skidded across the room, spilling books and half a crushed candy bar. Several towering figures stood around him, gray skin, jagged armor, tusks curling from their jaws. Zivok. Aliens. The kind you usually only see right before humanity loses in every bad sci-fi movie ever made. One of them jabbed at him with a scanner. Subject: human offspring. It barked in a language Evan didn't know but somehow understood thanks to the translator chip buzzing in his ear. Age: young. Threat level: minimal. Evan sat up slowly, cracking his knuckles. "Minimal, huh?" he said. "That's adorable." The nearest alien blinked, confused. Before it could react, Evan did what any self-respecting son of a living legend would do. He punched the alien square in what he assumed was the face. It hurt Evan more than it hurt the alien. "Oh. Okay, so maybe we negotiate," he grunted, clutching his hand. The alien growled lowly and pressed a control panel. Instantly, mechanical tendrils shot out from the floor, wrapping around Evan's arms and legs, hoisting him upright like a wriggling fish on a hook. "Awesome," Evan deadpanned. "First abduction and I'm already in some weird bondage situation." "Perfect." The lead alien, a scarred brute with eyes like dying stars, stepped forward. "Our research requires human subjects. You will comply." Evan gave a lopsided grin, blood dripping slightly from his split lip. "Buddy, you picked the wrong science fair project." The alien commander clearly didn't get sarcasm. It just nodded, signaling the others to drag Evan toward a holding cell. Meanwhile, high above Earth's atmosphere, the Zivok ship engaged its jump engines. The stars stretched into long white lines and in a blink they were gone, heading for an abandoned relic in orbit known as Zivok Prime. Aboard the ship, Evan sat chained inside a cold, dim cell. Metal bars, humming force fields, and the comforting smell of despair. He leaned his head back against the wall, sighing. "Okay, Dad," he muttered under his breath. "Time to do that thing you always said you would if anyone ever messed with me." Back on Earth, the kidnapping report triggered a flurry of alarms in the global defense network. Satellites whirred into action. Protocols were activated. Meetings were called. Experts debated. And one man, just one, rose from a battered wooden chair in a shadowed safe house somewhere in New York. He wasn't wearing armor. He wasn't carrying a weapon. He wasn't even angry. Not yet. John Wick simply stood up, adjusted his coat, and cracked his neck. Someone asked him, nervously, if it was worth risking a war over one boy. John stared at them, his face blank, voice even. "They touched my son." He slipped a single coin onto the table. A golden coin with an old, deadly mark. "They're going to wish they never learned how to speak." With that, he walked into the night, calm, deliberate, while above the earth, a ship full of very doomed aliens unknowingly sped toward their worst nightmare. John Wick stepped through the heavy steel doors of the United Earth Defense black site, his boots echoing down the long, sterile corridor. The air smelled like cold metal and bad decisions. At the end of the hallway, a room full of nervous officials awaited him. Men in suits. Women with grim faces. People who spent more time behind desks than in actual danger. General Markham, a broad-shouldered man with stress lines carved deep into his face, stood as John entered. "Wick," he said, clearing his throat. "We appreciate you coming. We're aware of the situation." John didn't sit. He didn't nod. He simply stood there, silent, waiting. Markham swallowed. "We have protocols for incidents like this. Negotiations. Careful diplomacy. Rescue operations involving." John raised a hand, cutting him off. "I'm not here for protocols," he said flatly. "I'm here for Thunderbolt." The room went dead silent. Papers stopped rustling. Someone dropped a pen and no one dared to pick it up. Thunderbolt, humanity's most dangerous handheld weapon. A railgun so powerful it could punch a hole through a battleship. It had been built, tested once, and then locked away because, frankly, nobody was crazy enough to actually fire it. Nobody, except the man standing in front of them now. Markham shifted uncomfortably. "It's experimental. It's unstable. It could." John tilted his head slightly. "It won't be unstable in my hands." It wasn't a threat. It wasn't even confidence. It was just a fact, stated as plainly as saying, "The sky is blue." Reluctantly, Markham gestured toward a sealed black case being wheeled into the room by two soldiers, both looking like they'd rather be anywhere else, like maybe on a different planet. The case clicked open with a hiss of compressed air. Inside lay Thunderbolt. A sleek, menacing weapon that hummed faintly as if impatient to be used. John picked it up, feeling its weight settle naturally into his hands. He gave it a once-over, then glanced up. "One condition," he said. Markham raised an eyebrow. "Which is?" "I'm not bringing it back." Markham nodded slowly. "Fair enough." They all knew that if John Wick was taking Thunderbolt, it wasn't coming home, but he would. Probably. A holographic map flickered to life behind them, showing the orbit of Zivok Prime, the abandoned station now repurposed by the alien empire as a fortress. Clusters of patrol ships blinked around it like angry wasps. Briefing Officer Miller stepped forward, clearing her throat. "Evan is being held in Sector D, deep inside the station," she said. "Defense systems include automated drones, plasma turrets, and approximately 1,200 Zivok soldiers." She hesitated. "Alone," she added, almost apologetically. John glanced at the map. Then at Thunderbolt. Then back at the officers. He shrugged. "I'll bring earplugs," he said dryly. "Might get loud." Miller blinked. Markham looked like he had just swallowed a lemon. Another official, younger, nervous, raised his hand awkwardly. "Sir, shouldn't we consider opening negotiations first? Maybe send a message of peace." John looked at him for a long moment. The kind of look that made you wonder if you just volunteered for a Darwin Award. Finally, John spoke, voice low and even. "Negotiations work when both sides fear consequences." He clicked Thunderbolt's safety off with a satisfying thunk. "I'm not here to negotiate. I'm here to deliver a message." He slung Thunderbolt over his shoulder and turned toward the exit. The young official, still naive enough to try, called after him. "What message?" John paused at the door, glancing back with a ghost of a smirk. "The universal language." He stepped through the doorway, disappearing into the shadows. Behind him, the silence in the room was heavy enough to crack stone. The message was clear. John Wick wasn't starting a war. He was ending one. The capsule shuddered violently as it pierced through the upper atmosphere of Zivok Prime, rattling like a dying washing machine with a death wish. John Wick sat calmly inside, Thunderbolt resting across his knees as if he were riding a train to work, not hurling himself at a floating fortress full of homicidal aliens. Outside the tiny viewport, the massive station loomed into view, a twisted cathedral of metal and decay. Rust bled from its hull like old wounds. Debris fields drifted lazily around it, the ghosts of smaller ships that had gotten too close and didn't live to tell about it. John checked the time. 5 minutes late, he muttered. "They'll probably charge me for parking." The capsule slammed into an auxiliary docking bay with a bone-jarring crunch. Metal screeched. Alarms howled to life. John calmly stood, brushed imaginary dust off his jacket, and pulled the lever to open the hatch. A wall of stale, recycled air hit him like a punch to the nose. The docking bay was deserted, for now. He stepped out, thunderbolt in hand. The first patrol of Zivok soldiers rounded the corner seconds later. A group of 6, their bioarmor gleaming dully under the emergency lights. They froze when they saw him. John tilted his head slightly, almost sympathetically. Then he pulled the trigger. Thunderbolt roared like a thunderclap. One shot. 6 aliens. Gone. Vaporized. A perfectly neat hole carved straight through them, and 2 walls behind them. John lowered the weapon, smoke curling from the barrel. 1 shot, 6 kills, he said to no one in particular. Not bad for a warm-up. Of course, the noise triggered every alarm system within a kilometer radius. Sirens wailed. Red lights strobed. Footsteps thundered through the metal corridors. John adjusted the Thunderbolt's charge setting and set off down the hallway at a leisurely stroll, the calm in the middle of a very stupid, very alien storm. Within moments, drones descended from hidden panels in the ceiling, sleek, spinning death machines armed with plasma cutters. John didn't even break stride. Boom. 1 shot, 1 drone turned into raining scrap metal. Another drone veered toward him. John sidestepped lazily, let it zip past and casually blasted it into sparks without looking back. Deadpan, he muttered. Someone skipped quality control day. More soldiers poured in, squads this time organized and ready. They shouted in guttural alien language, raising their weapons. John sighed. Finally, he said. Company. The firefight that followed wasn't a battle. It was a massacre. Thunderbolt sang its furious song through the station. Each shot left devastation. Twisted steel, collapsed corridors and alien bodies sprawled across the floor. At one point, 5 heavily armored elites tried to flank him. John ducked behind a ruined support beam, counted their heavy footfalls, then popped out and fired a single shot. The beam, weakened by the blast, gave way, and the entire ceiling collapsed onto the squad. Dust and rubble billowed into the air. John watched for a second, shrugged and kept moving. Might want to file a maintenance request, he said under his breath. Step by bloody step, he carved a path toward the heart of Zivok Prime, toward Sector D where Evan was being held. As he walked, his comms crackled. A voice, an alien commander, boomed through the intercom, thick with anger and confusion. Unknown intruder. Identify yourself. Cease hostilities immediately or be destroyed. John stopped, considered it for a moment, then raised the Thunderbolt and casually blew the intercom speaker clean off the wall. Message received, he said dryly. Another squad tried to intercept him in the main corridor. John dropped to one knee, fired upward, and brought half the ceiling crashing down onto them. As the dust settled, he stepped over the wreckage without even a glance. Yup, he said to himself, definitely gonna need a renovation after this. The deeper he went, the more desperate the resistance became. Automated plasma turrets popped out of walls, drones swarmed in packs, elite soldiers screamed and charged. John dismantled them all with brutal efficiency, barely breaking a sweat. In the middle of it all, standing ankle-deep in spent shells and alien limbs, he allowed himself a small, rare smile. They kidnapped the wrong kid, he said softly. The halls ahead flickered with emergency lights. The path to Sector D lay just beyond. John tightened his grip on Thunderbolt. It was about to get personal. John moved through the last twisted corridor, boots crunching over broken metal and scorched debris. The lights flickered above him like dying stars. Thunderbolt was low on power, not empty but enough to make things interesting. Ahead, 2 massive doors slid open with a heavy grind of gears. Beyond them, Sector D, the prison wing. And standing in the center of it, waiting like a nightmare that decided to hit the gym, was General Vral. 7 feet tall. Skin like iron. Arms as thick as concrete pillars. Vral wore black battle armor etched with alien runes, and in his hands, a plasma hammer the size of a motorcycle. Behind Vral, squads of elite soldiers lined up, gleaming bioarmor, crackling plasma rifles aimed at John. The general stepped forward, voice booming through the broken station. You are outnumbered, human, Vral growled. Lay down your weapon. Surrender. I may grant you a quick death. John exhaled slowly through his nose, deadpan. I appreciate the offer, he said, leveling Thunderbolt at the wall to his right. And I respectfully decline. He pulled the trigger. Thunderbolt unleashed a furious blast. The wall behind the elites exploded inward, sending shards of steel and concrete flying like shrapnel. Half the squad was shredded instantly. The rest opened fire. John dove sideways, rolled, and returned fire, each pull of the trigger delivering a thunderous bolt that ripped soldiers apart like paper dolls. Vral roared in anger, charging forward with terrifying speed for something that big. John sidestepped the first hammer swing by inches. The floor where he'd just been standing disintegrated into molten slag. "All right," John muttered under his breath, dodging another swing. Note to self, don't get hit. He slipped between two charging soldiers, cracked one across the helmet with the stock of Thunderbolt, then jammed the barrel into the alien's gut, and fired. The alien exploded from the inside, a mist of burning plasma and shredded armor. John didn't even blink. "Not every problem needs a smart solution," he said dryly, reloading Thunderbolt with a flick. "Sometimes, you just need a bigger hole." Vral howled in rage, swinging the hammer again. This time, John ducked low, sprinted forward, and fired point-blank into the general's thigh. Even armor that thick wasn't enough. The shot blasted a chunk the size of a dinner plate out of Vral's leg, sending the giant staggering. John didn't waste a second. He holstered Thunderbolt, drew a combat knife from his belt, and vaulted up the collapsing scaffolding nearby. He landed behind Vral, knife flashing, a deep, brutal slice across the back of the general's knee joint. Vral bellowed, swinging wildly. John ducked under the hammer, jammed the knife into Vral's side, and fired a single round from Thunderbolt into the blade's handle. The resulting explosion launched Vral across the room like a broken toy. John stood, breathing steadily, watching as the mighty general of the Zyvok Empire struggled to get up, and failed. "You kidnapped the wrong kid," John said simply. He turned away, moving toward the heavy security doors beyond. Inside, Evan was waiting. The door was sealed with a glowing magnetic lock, humming with alien energy. Something only authorized Zyvok signatures could bypass. John stared at it for a moment, considering the complexity. Then he raised Thunderbolt and blew it off its hinges. Problem solved. Inside the cell, Evan blinked up at him, chained to a floating containment field. A little banged up. A little bruised. But grinning like a miniature troublemaker. "Took you long enough," Evan said deadpan. John smirked slightly. "Traffic in low orbit," he said, shooting the containment panel. The energy field collapsed with a fizzle. Evan stumbled forward, and John caught him one-armed, steadying him. "Time to go," John said. He handed Evan a small plasma sidearm pulled from a fallen alien's belt. "Stay close. Shoot anything that isn't me." Evan checked the weapon clumsily. "I don't suppose there's a tutorial mode on this?" John chuckled once, a rare sound, and patted his son's shoulder. "You'll figure it out." Behind them, the station shook violently, alarms screeching louder than ever. More soldiers would be coming. More death. More war. John didn't care. He had his son. He had Thunderbolt. And he still had a whole lot of ammunition left. John moved fast, leading Evan through the crumbling prison sector. The boy stumbled a little, 12 years old, fresh from captivity, but he kept up, jaw set in a stubborn line that made John quietly proud. Above them, the bulkheads groaned ominously. The whole station felt wrong. Like a dying beast that didn't know it was already dead. John glanced at the navigation panel embedded in the nearest wall. Sector D. Maintenance tunnels. Reactor core, 2 levels down. He did some quick mental math. Plenty of time for one last mess. "New plan," John said, reloading Thunderbolt with a practiced snap. "We're not just leaving." Evan looked up at him, confused. "We're not." John smirked, cold and thin. "We're taking them with us." He found a maintenance shaft and forced it open, shoving Evan through first. As they crawled through the narrow passage, Evan asked, "Is blowing up an entire space station a normal thing for you, or is this like a special occasion?" John grunted. "Only on weekends." They dropped into a deserted engineering deck. The reactor door loomed ahead, thick, armored, covered in alien glyphs that screamed keep out in every language imaginable. John raised Thunderbolt. "Should probably knock," he said. Boom. The door blew inward in a shower of molten fragments. Inside, the main reactor pulsed with sickly green light, a massive sphere suspended in crackling magnetic fields, cooling towers churning sluggishly. John moved fast, fingers flying over alien control panels like he was checking email. Evan said, eyeing the sparking consoles. "Are you sure you know what you're doing?" "Of course," John said dryly. "I have a PhD in improvisation." He punched a final sequence and the cooling systems began to stutter. Warning klaxons shrieked. On the reactor's central monitor, a timer appeared. 15 minutes. Not bad. John slung Thunderbolt over his shoulder and picked up Evan with one arm, hoisting him like a sack of extremely sarcastic potatoes. "Hold tight," he said. Evan clung to him wide-eyed. "You're seriously doing this while carrying me?" John nodded, stepping back into the smoke-filled corridors as alarms blared around them. "Father-son bonding activity," he said. "Some dads take their kids fishing. We dodge plasma bolts and outrun nuclear-level explosions." The first wave of enemy soldiers swarmed toward them, dozens, maybe hundreds. John fired thunderbolt in controlled bursts, each shot carving bloody craters through the incoming ranks. He weaved through gunfire with deadly precision, one hand aiming, the other keeping Evan steady against his chest. "I gotta say," Evan muttered against John's shoulder, "this is not how I imagined my weekend going." "Welcome to real life," John replied, ducking under a plasma beam and returning fire without missing a beat. Another squad tried flanking from the side. John spun, blasting a hole through the deck beneath them. They disappeared screaming into the abyss below. Evan peeked over John's shoulder. Is that allowed?" John shrugged mid-run. "No rulebook in war." They turned another corner, more enemies, more chaos. But John's path was relentless, carved in straight lines of destruction. He didn't dodge enemies. He erased them. At one point, Evan pointed ahead. "Hangar bays that way." John nodded, skidding around a collapsing beam and snapping off another perfect shot. "I knew that," he deadpanned. Evan rolled his eyes but clung tighter. They burst into the hangar just as the reactor's countdown dipped under 5 minutes. Ships were parked in rows, ugly, beetle-like alien crafts. John spotted one small enough to steal and sturdy enough to survive a bad exit. He set Evan down behind a cargo crate. "Stay low." Evan nodded, clutching his borrowed plasma pistol in trembling hands. John marched toward the nearest ship, cutting down the remaining guards with grim efficiency. No wasted movement. No wasted shots. One elite tried rushing him with a plasma blade. John sidestepped, grabbed the alien by the wrist, and used its own momentum to hurl it into the engine intake of a nearby shuttle. The engine coughed once, sputtered, and spat out a cloud of fine pink mist. John glanced at it, nonplussed. Not FDA approved. He climbed into the alien shuttle, hotwired the controls in under 20 seconds, then swung the boarding ramp down for Evan. "Go, go, go." Evan sprinted, firing wildly behind him as he ran. Most of his shots missed. John didn't mind. He was 12. Shooting straight was extra credit. Evan dove into the shuttle and John sealed the hatch behind them. He yanked the throttle back. The shuttle lurched upward, engines screaming. Below them, the hangar bay exploded in a chain reaction of fuel cells and abandoned munitions. Through the viewport, they could see the rest of Zivok Prime beginning to unravel. Panels tearing free, decks imploding, firestorms rippling outward like solar flares. John leaned back in the pilot's seat, breathing steady, hands firm on the controls. Evan sat beside him, wide-eyed, watching the station burn. "You okay?" John asked without looking over. Evan swallowed hard. "Yeah. Slightly traumatized. But yeah." John allowed a tiny, almost invisible smile. "Good. Builds character." Behind them, the mighty Zivok Prime, symbol of alien power, collapsed into itself, detonating in a silent, magnificent fireball that lit up the dark side of Earth's orbit. Father and son rode away from the destruction, two tiny figures in a stolen ship, leaving nothing but ashes behind. The stolen alien shuttle drifted quietly through the stars, the soft hum of its patched-together engines the only sound inside the cabin. Outside the viewport, the burning wreckage of Zivok Prime still glowed faintly, like the last dying embers of a really bad decision. Evan sat cross-legged in the co-pilot's seat, helmet tucked under one arm, staring out into the endless black. He finally broke the silence with a question that had clearly been chewing on him for a while. "So, are we technically war criminals now?" John didn't look over. He just adjusted the flight path slightly and said, deadpan, "Only if we lose." Evan considered that for a moment, then nodded like it made perfect sense. Which, in John's book, it absolutely did. They flew on in comfortable silence for a while. Well, as comfortable as you could be when sitting in a ship that smelled like burnt alien rubber in desperation. Finally, Evan leaned back and sighed. "You know, when Mom said I should go out and make new friends, this wasn't exactly what I had in mind." John gave the faintest hint of a smirk. "You made an impression," he said. "Half the galaxy wants to kill you now. That's kind of like being famous." "Awesome," Evan muttered. "Can't wait to put that on my college application." A few warning lights flickered on the dashboard. Apparently, stealing a beat-up alien shuttle during an active firefight wasn't the best long-term strategy. John tapped the console a few times, then casually smacked it with the butt of Thunderbolt. The lights obediently shut off. Evan raised an eyebrow. "Wow. Technical genius." John shrugged. Same strategy one used for most problems. Hit it until it behaves. They floated past a shattered satellite, its pieces slowly tumbling through space. Evan watched it spin, then asked, "So, what now?" John leaned back in the pilot's seat, his voice as calm as ever. "Now, we go home." "And then what?" Evan pressed. "The aliens are gonna come after us, right?" John finally turned to look at him, and for a moment, something almost like warmth flickered in his eyes. Let them. It wasn't bravado. It wasn't arrogance. It was just inevitable. Like gravity, taxes, and John's general lack of patience for hostile extraterrestrials. They flew in silence again, the Earth now just a bright blue dot in the distance, growing slowly larger. After a while, Evan said, "You know, for what it's worth, you're pretty good at the whole dad thing." John didn't react right away. He adjusted their course by a few degrees, checked the engine temperature, and then finally said, "Don't tell anyone. I have a reputation." Evan chuckled. "Yeah. Wouldn't want the galaxy to find out the Baba Yaga is also Dad of the Year." John let the corner of his mouth twitch upward, the closest thing to a full smile he ever really gave. They passed a drifting cargo freighter, half destroyed and abandoned. Evan stared at it thoughtfully. "You think we'll ever have a normal life?" he asked. John was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Normal's overrated." He pulled back the throttle slightly, feeling the shuttle settle into a smoother glide. "Besides," he added, "where's the fun in being boring?" Evan grinned, leaning back in his seat, watching the stars slide by. Maybe they wouldn't have the easy life. Maybe there'd always be another fight, another threat, another insane mission that started with an alien making a terrible life choice. But sitting there, alive, free, and flying home with the only man in the universe crazy enough to call this a Tuesday, Evan decided he was okay with that. More than okay. John caught his son's glance out of the corner of his eye. "Seatbelt," he said flatly. Evan blinked. "We're in space." John deadpanned right back. "And physics is waiting to slap you if you forget." Evan laughed, finally clipping his harness in place. The Earth loomed larger ahead, beautiful and bright. Oh, it wasn't perfect. It wasn't safe. But it was theirs. And as long as there were stars to fly through and bad guys dumb enough to pick a fight, they'd be just fine. Probably. Maybe. John adjusted the controls one last time, setting them on course for atmospheric re-entry. He glanced sideways at Evan. "You hungry?" Evan's eyes lit up. "Starving." John nodded approvingly. "Good. First mission after we land, real food." He paused, considering. "And maybe a nap." "You?" Evan teased. "Nap?" John shrugged as the shuttle began its slow, fiery dive toward home. Even monsters need sleep sometimes. And with that, father and son disappeared into the thickening clouds, leaving behind one shattered empire, one very expensive space station bill, and the undeniable proof that no matter how big the galaxy got, humans, stubborn, reckless, impossible humans, were still the most dangerous thing in it. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe to this channel, and let's keep exploring the galaxy together.